It is always a personal concern to tell people they do not have to be afraid of the transition. I always call it a transition because there is no death for me. I see the people who are over there, and that's why you can assume it's just a change of levels, a change of frequency. You do not have to be afraid. It's easy. We are accompanied. Relatives who are already up there come to us and guide us in this light channel. And if you have a near-death experience, then you know you can look forward to it.
Miss Mikolajczyk-Touch, you work as a healer, and a few years ago you had a near-death experience that changed your life sustainably. But before we talk about this change, please tell us what happened back then.
Also am besten nehme ich Sie mit auf eine Reise rückwärts, gut 55 Jahre.
Well, I'd best take you on a journey back to around 55 years ago, when I was born into a completely normal working-class family. At first, I had nothing to do with supernatural experiences. I lived a completely normal life. Later, I studied and brought a son into the world. So, a completely normal life. And then I had a very, very difficult stroke of fate, an immense pain. And then I did what many people do. I thought that escape was the best solution. I left Lower Saxony and moved to the Dutch border with my son. And then I found out, through my body, I hadn't worked through something, a fact which was completely irrelevant to me at the time. My body developed cardiac arrhythmia, and again, my heart would stop for a moment, and then start up again. Until one day, which is now over 18 years ago, my heart stopped completely. What I now know is that in a white light channel, I was pulled upward out of my body. And in this light channel, everything was very light, very fast, very bright. And I was able to see my great-grandmother, who had already passed away at that time. And I thought, if that's what dying is, and this is what it feels like, I'm not afraid. I was able to see my body from above. And I thought, that's a brilliant feeling. I want to go further up. It's pulling me away. Until I had a last thought about my little son. I can't go away. I have to get back into this body. I was a single mother at the time, and I had to go back somehow. The last thing I know is a voice that I heard who said, you can go back, but then you have a task. And then it went back into this body with a hellish pain. I've never felt such a strong pain before, or after. And when I was really awake again, I knew something was different.
What exactly was different?
It started with me feeling the pain of other people in my body, and the feeling I have to get rid of it. Of course, that was paranormal and inconceivable for me. And I thought, I have to get rid of this pain. And then there was an event. My friend came to visit. And I said to her, my knee is starting to hurt. Did something happen with your knee? And she said, yes, she'd fallen on the stairs. And then I said, I have the feeling I have to make your pain go away. And then she said, how do you know that? And if you can get rid of it, that's great. And I don't have any pain anymore. So I said, I don't know how, I just know it. I feel it in my body. And then I tried to pull it out. After about a quarter of an hour, she was pain-free.
That means you didn't have a specific technique, but you just tried it somehow.
Mm-hmm. And then she said she was pain-free. And then I said, you must be imagining it. That can't be. How is that supposed to work? And then we started having fun with it. She said, well, we'll start testing your abilities. We invited other friends. One had a migraine, the other had back pain, and so on. And I felt it and pulled it out again and again. And it always worked. And then I thought, well, now through my near-death experience, I've gone crazy. That's not possible. I mean, it wasn't something I'd consider to be possible. I wouldn't have even gone to the healing practitioner back then. And I said to myself, I need to get rid of this. I have to find someone who can get rid of it again. In the end, I didn't find anyone. And maybe I could have lived with that until the next meeting where the same friend of mine was with me again. We sat in my winter garden and talked. And all of a sudden, a woman came up behind her whom I'd never seen in my life. And then I said, there's a woman standing behind you. She looks like this and she's talking to me. And then my friend turned around and said, Martina, I don't see anyone. Then I said, I'm telling you, she's standing right there. And then she said, the way you describe this woman to me, she's my grandmother. And I said, but she's been gone for a long time. What does she want in my living room? And then the woman told me that my friend was going to leave Germany next summer. She would sell her company, and that's how it happened later. And the same way this woman came, she was gone again.
How can one imagine this seeing? Is it a seeing like you're seeing me now, or is it more of an inner sense?
For me, it was a nightmare at first. And I see people like they're oscillating. Like I see you, but not in a fixed physicality. Maybe like painters who paint angels or describe them. Maybe that's why they paint them with wings, because they're oscillating. And that happened more and more often. And then it was clear to me, I'm mentally ill. That couldn't be explained by anything. And I called my friend who was already living in Holland. And I said, take me to a psychiatric clinic. I'm sick. That's not normal. It wasn't normal for me. And then she said, if we go to the psychiatric clinic, they'll keep you there if we tell them. You'll get medication, and you can't be doing that. You have to take care of your child. Come to Holland. There are people here who are familiar with things like that. So I came to a healer and a medium, which is what I work as myself today. It was in a very small garage. This man was blind. And he looked at me and said, you think you're crazy? And I said, yes, and I'm here to get rid of it. And then he said, I can't do that. You have paranormal abilities. That's completely normal in insider circles. It exists. And it's a gift you got through your return to the body. And you have to live with it. And I said, I don't want that. He said, yes, you have to. And your life will change completely. You will close your business coach office. You will work in 3 practices, in the West, in the South, and abroad. You will write books, work with doctors, work in hospitals, and help people to be healed. I pushed my chair back and said to my friend, no way. One of the 2 of us is crazy, and it must be him. I need to find someone who can get rid of this. And then I flew around the world. I was looking for people, waving my hands, please get rid of it. I went to research institutes and had the gift tested. There were stalls, 5 people in each of these stalls, people we couldn't see. And we had to feel what pain these people were in. And it worked for me in 4 stalls, and not in 1. And I was happy. I thought, okay, I can't do it. And then the examiner came and said, yes, there was no one in that stall, and we did that on purpose.
So, no coincidence.
The next disaster, again, no coincidence. I went to the Indians, I went to the Filipinos who removed tumors with their hands. The English queen who had always had a healer in her court. In every modern hospital, in England and Switzerland, healers work. I went to great seers, and everyone told me again and again, this is a gift. You have to accept it. I didn't want that. I wanted to be the way I was before.
That means you actually fought with your hands and feet to fulfill that task.
Yes, until the evening when my heart started giving out again, an arrhythmia. And then I called a colleague in Holland and said, "You have to put my heart in order. The same thing has started over again." And he got very serious and said, "Martina, if you don't accept the gift now, your son will also grow up without a mother." And that was the impulse. That was the trigger. I remember I threw myself on my bed, angry, and said, "Okay, whatever it is, wherever it comes from, if I have to live it, I'll accept it now. But I want to stay the way I am." Of course, you don't stay the way you are. And it didn't stay the way it was. Friends withdrew from this gift. It was scary. Many people said, "Now she's a witch." There were more and more people seeking help. At some point, I couldn't practice my profession as a business coach anymore. I had to close this office. And then I decided to become a self-employed person, as a healer, as a medium in terminal care. And I started to explore these things.
From today's point of view, why did you fight against this change?
Back then, I imagined this world with incense, a black cat on my shoulder. I went to congresses and met people where I thought, here genius and madness lie very close together. And I didn't want that for myself. And I was also afraid of this world. How is it lived? I had no experience with it. And that's why I wanted to go back to my normal life. Today I know this resolution, I want to stay as I am, which I succeeded in, was because I can understand every skeptic. Because I always say, conventional medicine, therapists, psychological work comes first. We offer complementary work. Today, with the knowledge and these experiences, I lost this fear. I would say I overcame it, I transformed it. And nevertheless, incredible things still happen. The universe is a closed system. Everything is energy. And from today's point of view, I can only with these universal explanations somehow make it credible or integrate it into everyday life.
One more question about your near-death experience. Could you immediately classify what you experienced at the time? Were you familiar with the term near-death experience?
That came later. For me, it was a leaving of the body and a return to the body. That was a real experience. But the term near-death experience and the fact that it can be taken as an explanation came later. When I went to ask people, what is it? What happened there? And it touched me that the people who have this experience always report the same thing. And that proved to me that it has to be true. There can't be hundreds of people, thousands of people, who have near-death experiences and always talk about the same things. This light channel, this being pulled upward. And it was also interesting to see the whole life again. You see the emotions you experience, the ones you caused others. Sometimes one can be a little angry, which hurts other people, and then you feel that yourself. That was also life-changing. Today I think about what I want to send out, which energies I want to give to others, because I know that it will be experienced again.
How has your view of human nature changed over the years through your experiences?
I became very humble toward this gift. In the past, I didn't want it. Today, I would never want to give it up. You gain much more appreciation for life, for people, for the world. That's one thing. Then this gift is so big, I became very reverent of it. And today I know that there is a life before life, a life after life. I'm sure of it. I experienced it. And I try more and more to live life in the now, because I learned that at any second everything can be completely different. It's certainly good to have plans, to have structures and order. I need that for my job now. I learned that in my life before. But also to have the freedom to be in the now. And for me, it is a very big wish to return to this unconditional love again and again. And I see in the world that we have lost so much appreciation, so much respect. It makes me sad how people deal with each other. It makes me sad what is happening globally in the world. And I think the gift was given to me to be able to bring this unconditional love back to people in small ways. And so I'm able to integrate it into my little world. I try to bring it into the world in a large framework, through lectures as well. And I think it was very important for me to receive this gift and to submit to the universe.
How does this spiritual healing take place in practice? How can you help and, as you write on your homepage, offer a supportive treatment to conventional medicine?
Well, basically, my work has remained as it used to be, only that I have more knowledge. Those who seek help come today after so many years, partly as chronically ill people, as we have in rheumatism. For example, where conventional medicine says we can't do anything here, as we have it in cancer as well. But of course, after all these years, there are also people who are looking for alternative healing methods, who no longer want symptomatic treatment. As in, I'll take a blood pressure pill and my blood pressure will go down. They say, I want to eliminate the cause and want to be treated alternatively. We work with appointments. People come into the practice. I still walk around the body with my hands. Today I know that it's all physics. I know we have a vibrational field about 30 centimeters around the body, and the healer enters this vibrational field. And because he enters the vibrational field, the pain is transferred to the healer's body, and it can be felt. And then I feel where something is not okay, and still pull it out just as I did at the very beginning, between coffee and dinner with my friend. Today I can explain to people what their disease could mean. I have learned that the soul speaks to us through the body, and you can maybe figure out where to look. Maybe, like with me, it was escape. Maybe you still need to cope with something, if people are open to it. People come to me, be they big, small, old, young, bank director or hairdresser, all social classes, and I think that is a success that I have remained so down to earth. I love all these people. I love people in general. And yes, there are skeptics, and they are my favorite, because I was also so skeptical. They say, yes, Mrs. Mikolajczyk-Touch, you can believe, but you don't have to. Prove it to me. Although I have to say, the gift does not prove itself.
What does that mean?
Especially when it doesn't work. When I have people in the practice who say, well, let's see, and they're totally closed off, then I have to say, the gift does not prove itself. We don't have to illuminate God. We are allowed to illuminate our souls and feel it. Feel it, then you will feel that it works. I am then often asked, do you have to believe for it to work? Today I know it is independent of faith. But if we believe, healing takes place faster. Doubt, I already knew that as a business coach, is a restrainer. But I have experienced things where people didn't even know I was working. For example, with a person who, let's say, had died. I received a call, this person was not even close to me, and the doctors declared them to be clinically dead. They no longer had a connection from the brain to the spinal cord. At the time, I didn't know much medically, and the wife called and said, please, my husband should not leave, please help me. And I said, I will do everything that is in my power. And then we actually brought this person back to life. I always say, whether that was good or bad, that's a different story. But it worked. And when this man was awake again, he said to his wife, I don't know anything, except I saw a slim blonde woman who brought me back to life. And the wife then said, I called this woman to do that.
That means he had this impression, he had this memory from a time when he was actually unconscious.
Yes, unconscious, dead, or whatever you want to call it.
How often does someone usually have to come to you? Is one treatment sufficient?
It depends. Of course, I say a disease that has been around for 15 years or 20 years is often not dealt with after one treatment. The body has to activate the self-healing powers, and sometimes it also needs 2 or 3 impulses. It is different from body to body. It is different from disease to disease. But I have also experienced spontaneous healings, where after one treatment, the body was able to bring everything back to normal. I have also experienced miracle healings, where to me unfathomable, a body was healed again, where everyone said that cannot be healed. It's all happened.
Which disease was it about?
It was the final stage of cancer. The whole body was already full of metastases. The doctor said it might take another 6 weeks. This person is still alive today and in good health. How this works is inexplicable to me. These are miracles for me. I believe in miracles that are sent, that are hardly explainable. I always say, we're allowed to accept them.
And you cannot expect them to repeat themselves at will, right?
And also the other way around. Simple things that suddenly did not work. I have talked a lot with the surgeons who also say, we did very small surgeries and then the patient died. No one expected that. We did huge surgeries where we thought the patient's survival isn't likely, and the patient survived. I think a lot plays into this. Also, what is in the soul's plan? How the people have chosen their own path.
You are also active as a medium. You call yourself a clairvoyant. How do you define this term? What can you see that others cannot see?
Yes, this is also a bit adventurous, I would say. This clairvoyance is a bit as if we are talking and at the same time the TV is on, where I see things that belong to the previous life of the person, or also explanations about the present, or how life continues, but mostly sections of their life. Sometimes it is just an impulse, where I say to my counterpart something like, tell me, do you plan to do an apprenticeship at the police, for example? Where my counterpart says, how do you know that? You do not know me. Then I say, yes, I do, because I see you. And then there are things where I say, I would not advise you to pursue this. That does not look like it will end well. You can do it, but you will tell me later that it was not a good idea. But now you could say, that was my story at the time. Doubt, a self-fulfilling prophecy. When I say, it does not look good, I have already manifested something. But when I say it for people who are not even there, for example, for a brother, of the one who is looking for help, who does not even know about it, and then it does end the way I see it, that shows me there is truth to it. I have a very good example that I have experienced here in the practice. Maybe a little sad, but still very striking. I had a woman here who had an unfulfilled desire to have children. I looked at it and said, I see her with healthy twins, a little boy and a little girl. Then we also treated the unfulfilled desire to have a child. She then became pregnant, called me and said she's pregnant with a little boy. And then I thought, oh, not twins, a little boy. But then I questioned my gift again and said, what kind of information does it give me that isn't true? I saw twins. Oh well. In the 5th month, she lost this child, stillborn. She came back to me, and I said, yes, I still see her with healthy twins, a boy and a girl. She later became pregnant again with a little girl. Then I thought, that's not possible. How does that work? What did I see there? Then I thought, well, maybe a little boy, a little girl conceived shortly after each other. But I saw living children. She then also lost her baby girl. And then she didn't come back anymore. She called me and said, clairvoyance, prophecy, you can forget all of that. Take down your door sign. You can't do it. And that was a very bad day for me. Because of course I believed, yes, I can't do it. And I didn't want the gift anyway. But later, 2 years later, she called me. She had brought healthy twins into the world, a little boy and a little girl. We often don't see the intermediate steps. It goes up to very funny events, like when my son graduated, where he said, oh mom, I don't know how math went, can't you please take a look? Did I pass? Where I then could say, don't worry, it went well, but German wasn't that great. That's difficult for real life.
How do you see human fate? Do we have a free will? Is our future open? Or is everything predetermined?
I think both are true. I'm pretty sure before the soul incarnates into a body, it wrote its soul plan and also determined the key points of that incarnation. What's in between is certainly variable. And I also think we can even exchange key points. We know from the Akasha Chronicle that can be read by mediums, course corrections are possible. And I know today it depends on our state of consciousness. I always say, if we have decided in this life, we first want to get to know life, we have decided to live a normal life. We work until 6 p.m. At 8 p.m. we watch the evening news, put our feet up, a bottle of beer, and live like that. And then it will be like that. But if we decide to live a life where we want to develop our consciousness, where we want to learn things, where we also want to solve things, then there are many key points, many strokes of fate. Because if everything is happy, we don't learn. We learn from our pain, from our fate, from our longing. And with that, I think it also is variable. I always say people who are in consciousness development processes, it is very difficult to say today, it is like this, and tomorrow the future will be like that, because they are in a developmental spiral. But the key points are still true. As an example, I once said to a lady, what connects you to Rome? I see you in Rome. And she said, "No, definitely not. Italy is not my country." And I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "No, definitely not." A few years later, she met an Italian. His mother lives in Rome, so she had to go to Rome. There in Rome, she met another spiritual woman who gave her something along the way. So she went back to Germany, and 6 months later, the Italian man separated from her. She was heartbroken. She called me and said, "You said I have to go to Rome. Now I was there because of my love, and now it's falling apart. Something's not right." I said, "You met a woman there, right?" She said, "Yes." She gave me a whole new way of thinking. And I said, "That's why you had to go to Rome." So I think the key points, that's what the soul imagined, and that's where we're going.
You mentioned self-fulfilling prophecies. When do you think it makes sense to talk about the future? Wouldn't it be better not to say anything about it in general?
I'm sure that people are led to me. I don't believe in coincidence anymore. And then I also know that it's supposed to be that way. But I would never allow myself to address someone on the street or at the hairdresser and say, "Ah, I'm just seeing this and that." I think there should be a request. In terms of the self-fulfilling prophecy, I found two things to be true. One, that we should really be careful what we bring about with our thoughts. Our thoughts have a lot of power. I experienced that myself. After 7 years of practice, I developed a kind of burnout, and I knew I had to get out of there for a week. And then I found a flight to Fuerteventura. And after 7 days of stay, I had a friend with me. "No, I'm still too exhausted. I can't fly back." And in the morning, I say to my friend in the hotel, "I'm not getting on that plane. I have to stay here. I'm so exhausted." But we had to. I had the practice. I had to go back. We were at the airport. The plane didn't come. And then my friend said, "Can you stop manifesting that you don't want to get on this plane?" Oh, that's right. I manifested it. The plane was in Berlin with a defect. It didn't come anymore. But now, no longer self-fulfilling prophecy, a woman sat with us on the sun terrace and told us that there is a health practice in Fuerteventura and that they are still looking for a healer. And my friend said, "Yes, she's sitting here and she doesn't want to go back anyway." So I got in touch, and then 2 years later I opened a practice in Fuerteventura, and everything turned out like the healer and the medium said. And I don't think that's a self-fulfilling prophecy anymore. I always differentiate. What do I manifest? And what do others manifest from us? Because energies flow into other energies.
It is obvious that people lead their lives very differently. Some go through a developmental process, with others it is not recognizable. Do you really believe that we can choose the way of our life, of our life's plan, as freely as you take something out of the shelf? Or are there also principles that determine our life and our life plan?
I'm convinced of it. I learned to believe from regression therapy that we have already lived life. And we have a responsibility to bring something back in order. And we can do that in the following life too. So I know, for example, from examples of regression therapies, some people allow themselves to take other people's lives in this life. You hear it every day. And we know that there is a responsibility, a consequence. For me, there is no such thing as purgatory. When we return to the other side, as I always call it, we are allowed to give life back to this person in a later life. it is a consequence. And the second consequence is that we are allowed to experience the same feelings, the same emotions, as this person who has lost their life, or maybe also the emotions of their relatives. That means we know we reincarnate again as a parent, give life back to this child, and will lose it in order to live through the same pain. And I also see that it is not only the case that we say, I would like to live this life, be a supermarket owner. It is mostly about emotions. I know when we are on the other side, we're often in disbelief, because on the other side, everything is light and easy, harmony and peace. And when the little soul says, when people are in human bodies, they separate themselves from here, and then they experience pain, the big soul says, or the big power says, yes, that is so, but we don't believe it. And when the little soul says, long enough, I don't believe it, not even from those who were already incarnated, the big power will say, then go down and experience it for yourself. And the little soul says, yes, I want that. Then we go through the birth canal where we forget, and then the game of life begins. You learn separation, parents separate, children of divorce. It hurts. And then you live this pain. I always thought, well, if you have made the experience, then life should be over and you can go back. But we know that the second half of life is there to transform it again, to live attachment without pain. Then we would have solved it for this life. But we also have free will, and we can even say, I want to end my life. I want to go. Suicide. I don't want to do it anymore. We know from regression therapy that we are allowed to live this again in the next life, until we have learned the lesson.
You mentioned the birth canal, where we forget. Why do we forget what happened in past lives or in a pre-existence?
I'm sure that the soul has not forgotten it. But first we come without a consciousness. I always say our head is like a black box, like in an airplane. And this black box is filled over the course of our life. Things like, if you're hungry, you have to eat something. If you're too small, you can't do that. Don't climb up these trees. With praise and reprimand. And this black box is filled with beliefs. And this is what we live. And later on, the soul will always have this call. It is a quiet voice, the voice of the heart that sits behind it and says, yes, but we wanted something else, or we wanted to learn that. And then people come into our life who awaken the consciousness again, who allow the soul's voice to become louder again after this forgetting of the brain when it comes through the birth canal. It is the inner voice. And for me, these are people who awaken it again, like a healer, like a medium. Or also, some people have déjà vu experiences that say, I have seen this person only once, but I have the feeling I've known him for a lifetime. Those are memories. Or they go into houses and they know, behind this door it looks like this. On the soul level, I think we have not forgotten this, only on the head level. And I also think that makes sense. Because if we knew, we would not enter a learning process. Then we would say, tomorrow there is a tree on the street and I have an accident. Then we would not want to leave. That's how I imagine it.
You wrote a book with the title With Love for Life that is available through your practice. How did that come about? What is its content?
It came about because I wanted to document it. Extraordinary abilities. How do you live with it? And I thought, It is like a business card. People can read a little about me, so they can get an impression of a person with paranormal abilities and a normal life. And I wrote the funny stories from the practice into it. What can you do with which disease? And then I brought it into the world with a private publisher. And I thought, I'm leaving something in the world, something that is written down, something that makes it more tangible.
The topic of death is still taboo in our society. People do not like to talk about it. And when it is time for someone to die, the relatives often hold back. The topic is dominated by fear. From your perspective, what could one do to reduce the fear of death?
Ja, es ist mir selbst auch immer ein persönliches Anliegen, den Menschen mitzuteilen.
It is always a personal concern to tell people they do not have to be afraid of the transition. I always call it a transition because there is no death for me. I see the people who are over there, and that's why you can assume it's just a change of levels, a change of frequency. You do not have to be afraid. It's easy. We are accompanied. Relatives who are already up there come to us and guide us in this light channel. And if you have a near-death experience, then you know you can look forward to it. Of course, life is beautiful, but there's nothing bad, nothing to be afraid of. Fear also holds us back. It's more difficult for the soul to leave the body when relatives hold on, or when we are afraid. What I find very interesting is that the soul often decides. I have experienced that people died when, for instance, the daughter just left the room for a second. And then the daughter was sad and asked, "Why did mother leave when I wasn't with her?" And I said, "She could only leave then because you were holding on." And I have also experienced that a grandmother waited until the last grandchild had flown in from America. The door opened, and then she could leave. And these are beautiful moments for me. I have tried to establish this a bit. I'm of the opinion that we should know what the way back is like. I gave lectures about it, and I wanted to integrate it like a school subject. I worked with a kindergarten on these spiritual sciences. Life comes, life goes. But unfortunately, in our world, it is not wanted as much and hard to establish. So I couldn't keep doing it.
Ms. Mikolajczyk-Tacz, I wish you all the best for your future projects. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.